Hello, welcome to new Reddit voiceover update. Today we will take a look on subreddit, Tales from Tech Support. Enjoy. They are very important reports, so of course nobody reads them. Got a call today from one of our clients. Her user Bob should receive some very important sales reports via email every morning at 8 o'clock, but he's not been receiving them. She has no idea if this problem is affecting just Bob or all the users, no idea how long ago this started, nothing. She's just very insistent that this needs to be fixed now because the reports are very important, etc. etc. I tell her to forward me the delivery failure email. She has no idea what I'm talking about. I tell her that, since we know the reports are important, the software sends a notification every time a report does not execute or a scheduled email can't be delivered. Which is how they should have been alerted to the problem the moment it happened, not by running into Bob at the coffee machine who said he's not been getting the reports for a few days. She has no idea what I'm talking about, so I remote into her machine and open the admin panel, where I discover that the notification emails are all sent to a Jones@company.com. Who is A. Jones? She has no idea. She calls someone, who calls someone else, until someone remembers that Alice Jones is a former employee who left the company 5 years ago. I try to explain it's not a good idea to send those email notifications to someone who's no longer with the company. That email is probably inactive by now. Let's change this to an email address that is 100% active right now. And it's best not to use someone's personal email, because sometimes people leave the company, or they go on holiday or on leave, and they need to monitor those notification emails. She eventually tells me to use sales@company.com. Fine, I change the recipient and trigger Bob's subscription manually. I tell the client to check the sales email to see if she got a delivery failure email, and what does it say? Oh, I don't have access to that account. I don't know who reads those emails. That's just what we use to send our company newsletter. This is just wonderful. I've been talking for 30 minutes trying to explain why it's important to monitor those emails. And she's not been listening to a single word. Eventually I change the address to her personal email, trigger the thingy again, and what do you know? She receives a delivery failure email listing the exact reason why Bob hasn't been getting emails. Which BTW is that Bob is using his personal Hotmail email instead of the corporate one. And for very obvious reasons the mail server is configured not to send reports to external emails. Which BTW means that Bob has never received a single one of the very important reports. Not one. I leave the client with instructions to 1. Deliver Bob's reports to his corporate mailbox only, and 2. Change the notification emails so they go to an email that is not personal and is monitored often. I've put this in writing. I doubt she'll do either of those things. She's an external client, so all I can do is bill her for this colossal waste of time and complain to the internet about it. Uh-oh, where's my Faraday cage when I need it? Back a while, mid-90s or so, I did installs around Australia on a project using electronic reader software running on brand servers, high-quality USA tech, plus a reader app running on network PCs. The server was to keep electronic documentation which was frequently updated, thus saving on a huge paper cost. Think like 22 huge volumes getting pages updated almost every week, plus only one person could use a volume at a time, causing a bottleneck. Not many areas had networks at that stage and had a lot of locally sourced PC gear. My job was install a few servers with, for the day, huge CRT monitors plus network various local PCs to it. The locals in the support center I went to do the install all got a bit twitchy when they saw the monitor sizes. Back then, due to rapid technology changes, there had been a lot of union activity, bans, and strikes etc. over the job changes. Some locals thought the huge CRT monitors would be radiation hazards. I think at the time their CRT, cathode ray tube for youngsters, monitors were 14 or so, the was 20 to 30 something inches. Shortly later, a few union reps turned up and would not let them be used until tested for EMF fields etc. So after about a day's impasse, we arranged for a radio transmission tech with an EMF meter to come and test the monitor. He waved his monitor in front of the screen, negligible reading. He waved it all around the back, negligible reading. The union reps started getting annoyed and starting blaming the tech for a faulty meter. I will pause at this point to say that the gear was built to impeccable USA/Euro standards. It was great quality gear. So having an inkling re my gear vs their cheapo PCs, no corporate standard PCs in those days at many sites, I suggested they test a few of their PC monitors. Some scoffing occurred and finally the tech tested the first PC monitor. Result? EMF radiation off the scale. Tested behind and around the monitor, even higher levels. We tested a number of monitors and many were at dangerous levels. They were very cheaply made monitors from SE Asia. The gear came from the USA and Europe. After getting the OK, I installed and commissioned my gear and got out of there while a big burst of industrial action started re their dangerous equipment. It was a funny few days, smiley face. CEO almost fired me on the spot. So I worked at tech support for a big German retailer and the CEO's laptop needed some updates on several programs, because we weren't allowed to push that remotely on him, his rule. I go into his office and he was already annoyed about the fact it was going to take longer than 2 seconds. So he said he was going on a break. I do the thing and left. Took me 30 seconds. I get a call from him 5 minutes later. You fucked up my computer, my screen is flashing and I can't press anything, get in here now. Sweat pouring down my back as I took the elevator and came back in. What the fuck did you do? I can't do shit here without you guys messing up every tiny thing. I swear I'm getting a whole new department if this shit happens again. I looked, screen flashing, couldn't even get to reboot. Panic intensifies. I look over to his side of the desk and there's the remote numpad with a folder on the enter key. I pushed the folder off the thing and couldn't hide the grin off my face. This didn't happen okay. Don't tell anyone downstairs first thing I did. Condescending fuck. Why I'm on paid leave over a $5 flash drive, with nothing of value on it, getting smashed. Some back information. I work for a corporation and/or institution where users handle enough information to be able to commit at least 2 to 3 felonies for every little query they touch, which isn't that hard to imagine. As such, they have a lot of policies that seem like extreme overkill, but on some level I agree with the attempt. The actual application of the rules I think borders on insanity, but the attempts aren't all complete failures. And AMP X200B. So some info you need to know. There's an internal USB connector inside the case. All the external USB ports have physical blocks super glued in. This is another story I've already posted. And AMP X200B. So, Friday morning 8 a.m. I'm sitting around waiting for a ticket / something to do. I get a call in that a computer can't log in. There's no ticket because, well, they can't log into. Start a ticket. Entirely understandable. The computer is network login, so there's 1,000 different things it can be. Heck, it could just be unplugged and not turning on. Why, I'll know how users can be. I head up to their cubicle and start checking. Everything is plugged in, the computer turns on and there's no internet. I switch her network cord with her named horse to check the cord / everything upstream. Her neighbor's computer connects with her jack. I log into the local admin account and there's no internet connection or network connection at all. Check device manager and there's the problem. The driver for the onboard network got corrupted or something, can't roll it back either. And AMP X200B, great, this means I need authorization from cybersecurity to use a flash drive, and then I'll need to tear the computer apart to get to a USB port that is hidden inside the case that isn't superglued. Now the key for the case requires my supervisor to sign off on it and give me the key for the case lock. As well, I have to write up the ticket and put it into the system. And AMP X200B, I run down to the Bat Cave and download the driver for her computer and email it to my boss, with a note to stick it on a thumb drive. And then walk to his desk. And AMP X200B, hey boss, I emailed you a network driver I need on a thumb drive. I also need you to submit my authorization form to CyberSeconds for the use of a portable storage device. Yes, that really is 2 forms. And AMP X200B, so we sent the form off to cybersecurity to authorize. Request for USB storage device usage, time estimated on the work, 15 minutes. Reason, copying network drivers to get the computer back on the network. And AMP X200B, and AMP X200B, half an hour later, no response. Head of IT calls down to cybersecurity to get an ETA. And AMP X200B, 10 minutes later the request comes back as denied. And AMP X200B. Reason, just email the file. And AMP X200B, so we got the biggest idiot ever reviewing the request. She has a tendency to just completely drop the ball. Before they took the job in cybersecurity, she had neither experience in cybersecurity, nor any basic understanding of IT. But it's okay, she can haphazardly enforce rules she doesn't understand, and she spends her day helping idiots reset their passwords using the password reset tool. And AMP X200B, so my boss has to call her and explain the situation. After 5 minutes on the phone, he has to go upstairs to the boss of cybersecurity and explain why she's an idiot today. And AMP X200B, half an hour later the approval comes from cybersecurity comes into my email, and my boss texts me to grab the form from him, and his spare keys and USB drive. And AMP X200B, so now I have both authorization forms, and I return to the woman's desk. She left a note for me that she's making a Starbucks run and will be back. And AMP X200B, so I power down her computer and turn it on its side so I can get it open to plug the USB in. I'm standing there fiddling with a flash drive and someone yanks it out of my hand, tosses it to the floor, and he starts stomping on it. And AMP X200B, what the hell are you doing? USB devices are banned, he replied. And AMP X200B, whoa. First of all, I have an authorization form from cybersecurity. Second of all, that's company property. And third of all, you just destroyed evidence, I tell the idiot. So I call my boss, and he's still in cybersecurity's office, or water cooler / break room, as I explain what went down. Cybersecurity overhears this exchange. Cybersecurity decides to open a file on mishandling of suspect data, aka smashing evidence. And AMP X200B, around about 11 a.m. my boss comes back to the user's desk with a different flash drive and the drivers for the network adapter and another stack of new forms for him to do the work. And AMP X200B. I spent an hour with cybersecurity filing out paperwork about the destruction of a 5.00 flash drive, giving my statement on the data mishandling, and my statement responding to the accusation of using a USB storage device. And AMP X200B, so it took 3 hours and 15 minutes of 2 text time, including the head of IT, to reinstall a network driver. And AMP X200B, and now they have to pay a data recovery specialist God only knows how much to try to recover nothing of any value on a 5.00 flash drive, to prove there was nothing malicious on it. And AMP, X200B, oh, and I'm on paid leave because they don't know for certain what's on the flash drive. Cybersecurity told me that as long as data recovery finds what I said is on it, or can find anything, that I'm in the clear. If the drive hadn't been smashed, cybersecurity would have just looked at the USB drive and looked at what is on the drive. Should have taken like 8 seconds to do. And AMP, X200B, instead I can collect paychecks until the data recovery experts take a few cracks at the USB drive. And AMP, X200B, but the good news is that I got to go home early on a Friday, and AMP, X200B, also I get a long weekend, maybe I'll binge watch Stargate. When a new IT department head steals the prestige email address from long-time employee and lives to regret it. A number of years back I was working for a company that had been around for many years. I was only relatively new myself, but there were still a couple of old guard senior engineers around who had been there from the start. The kind that knows where all the obscure, undocumented insider stuff is and can fix most problems in 5 seconds that the rest of us might take hours to solve. One of the guys in particular, who I shall refer to as Joe, a bearded and jovial gent with a very Steve Wozniak persona, was always happy for us to approach him with our questions and welcomed us to leverage his vast knowledge of how the company's sprawling IT infrastructure worked to make our lives easier and cope with the constant unrealistic expectations of upper management. He was a real, old-school engineer, someone who loved their job and was well respected by everyone around the department. So when his friend, the current department head, a man of comparable knowledge and experience, retired and was replaced from the outside with a young and brash one with a business degree and little technical knowledge who was also called Joe, it was a big change for everyone. Fortunately for us, he didn't interfere too much with the technical aspects of our day-to-day jobs. At least at first. When the company first started out, they weren't too concerned with formality when it came to email address policy. In later years, as the company had grown, they tightened the bolts with an official policy of issuing staff with a more formal address of firstname.lastname@department.countrycode.company.com, mail to firstname.lastname@department.company.com, but those who were around from the early days retained their original name at company.com, mail to name@company.com, addresses as an alias. It was somewhat of a status symbol and sign of authority in the company to have one, and those that did would use that version as their sending address and proudly have it in their email signatures and on their business cards. The retired head had one such address, as did Joe, in the form of joe@company.com, mail to joe@company.com, and you always knew when you saw an email come into the inbox from somebody with one of these addresses that they were someone important who had been around for a while. Most of the department heads were long-term employees who used them, and it wasn't long before the new IT head noticed this aspect of our corporate culture and clearly envied his peers. But as a new employee, he was stuck with his formal email address, and they weren't issuing new legacy email addresses of this kind unless they were for someone way up the food chain. Even as head of IT, he had no authority to claim one, which is why when one day he spotted an email from Joe using his legacy address, he saw an opportunity to get what he was coveting. So, as the tale goes, he called Joe into his office and had an exchange that went something like this: IT head, hey Joe, great work on the capacity report and getting it to me so quickly. We should be able to get approval from finance to expand our storage way sooner than I thought. Joe: not a problem. Is there anything else you needed from me for it? IT head: nope, everything is there, thanks. But I happened to notice when you sent it through you were using a different email address, a little different from the rest of the team. Joe: yes, that's the one I've always used from when I started, and everyone here knows to reach me at. Also, some of our older systems and scripts we still use from the early days were hard-coded to use it as well, so I'm still actively using it to get critical alerts, and I've got rules set up to forward them onto the relevant team addresses we use these days, since the only alternative is to budget a major project to go through all our legacy stuff to change it, and we were never able to get approval for that with everything else going on around here. IT head: I've got no problem with that, but I was interested in getting one of those kind of addresses for me. It would make it easier for people to, know I'm the head of this department rather than just another employee here. My predecessor had one, so it should be no problem for me to have one as well too, right? Can you make that happen? Joe: I'm sorry, I wish I could, but it's HR that makes that decision, and it's their policy is to only issue personal addresses at the top corporate domain level now for C-level recruits and their immediate assistants. IT head: You've been here for a long time, surely there isn't a way or someone you know who can make this happen? Joe: I'm sorry, it's a decision way above my pay grade. I'd be happy to put a request in for you to the head of HR to see if they could do it as a favor, but I'm pretty certain what their answer will be. IT head: Annoyed: Okay, thanks, do it and let's see what happens. Joe goes and logs the request, but of course the head of HR knocks it back, citing policy and not wanting to set a precedent even as a favor to Joe. Joe goes back to give the IT head the bad news. Joe knocks: Hey, you know that request I put through to try and get you a top-level email address? Unfortunately, HR have knocked it back. I did my best to try and push it through, but they were firm on our current corporate policy of not issuing any new ones except for those at the very top. IT head: Visibly unhappy: I'm sorry to hear that. Are you sure you did everything you could? Joe: Yes. It's out of either of our hands, unfortunately. IT head: Fine then, and Joe was right. There was no way the IT head was going to be issued with a brand new personal address. However, his position did allow how to authorize the reassignment of existing email addresses to staff, which was normally used to forward mail and alerts still being sent internally to staff who had left the company. He soon realized this was possible and formed a plan, calling Joe back into his office for another conversation. IT head: Hey Joe, you know how we can't get new personal email addresses created, but we can still reassign an existing one into my name, right? Joe, frowning: We can do that, yes. You have the authority to have the email address of anyone who has left redirected or assigned to anyone else if you so wish. Did you want your predecessor's address? I mean, we can do it, but it would confuse a lot of people if they saw your email coming from someone who is gone. IT head: What about email addresses of existing staff? Joe, frowning harder and seeing where this was going: You do have the authority, but it would still confuse people and you would be getting all the legacy alerts and notifications, which would make you responsible for ensuring they flow through to the right people when they arrive. IT head: I think I can handle forwarding a couple of lousy emails whenever I see them. I have a greater need for visibility here, and there is no business requirement for you to have one, so start the process of transferring joe@company.com, mail to joe@company.com, across to me immediately. Let me know once it's done so I can let everyone know. So poor Joe was forced to dig his own grave and give up the email address he had held since day one. He definitely wasn't happy about it, but did as he was instructed. Falling back on his regular corporate address, he sent an email out to the immediate team and his contacts to let them know what was happening and to please use his full address moving forward to contact him. At the same time, the IT head proudly sent out a company-wide email broadcast letting everyone know that his email address had been updated and could now be reached at joe@company.com, mail to joe@company.com, as the head of IT. Weeks went by and it was clear he was taking every opportunity to send out emails using his new address, New stationery was issued along with business cards clearly showing his position and contact address. He was clearly reveling in having a coveted address and the prestige and recognition it instantly gave him, especially when dealing with other offices and people who didn't know he was only a relative newcomer. Life was good, that is, until one fateful morning when he wasn't in his office browsing Facebook like he usually would be doing when everyone else arrived. Turned out he had forgotten about his responsibility to forward through important notifications when they came through to him. He had set up a rule to handle them, sure, but not to forward them as promised, but instead deleting them directly from his inbox without notice. One particular alert dealt with backup failures for a particularly important and long-term defense contract. One of our key SLAs was to ensure daily incremental and weekly full backups being performed on one of these old legacy systems that Joe had mentioned to him, both verbally and in writing. The media in an old backup unit had failed and was repeatedly notifying the issue. It was normally a simple fix: replace the faulty media in the backup unit and restart a full backup run, but with no alerts being sent through, nobody knew there was a problem. So when a request came through from the client to perform a restore of the previous week's data after an accidental deletion, that backup team found, to their horror, that no backups had been running for the past several weeks and the data had been lost. The client was not amused. The CEO, with whom they had a close relationship, was even less so. The IT had attempted to throw Joe under the bus when word came down that the company was going to incur a massive rebate for the SLA breach, but Joe in his wisdom had ensured he had done a complete CYA when handing over his email address, including email exchanges with the IT head highlighting the importance of the alerts and to ensure they went to the right people, including detailed instructions on how to set up forwarding rules and where to send them. All completely ignored. HR policy was specific when it came to important email. It was the clear responsibility of the recipient to ensure they were handled accordingly, and the IT head had clearly failed in his accepted responsibilities. He didn't last probation, and was gone within the next month. Everyone was wondering who we would be getting in a position next. HR and management were tight-lipped on the topic, and there was plenty of speculation within the department about what might happen next. But everyone was smiling when they walked in on a Monday to see Joe sitting in the IT head office. In the wake of what happened, management decided in their wisdom that the IT department should have a head who actually knew something about IT and tapped Joe to take the seat. He hung on for a few more years before retiring or moving on, but during his tenure he was one of the best IT managers I have ever worked for, and the position didn't change him from being the friendly, helpful, and supportive teacher that he was. I was sad to see him go, but while he was still with us, I always smiled when I saw his emails coming through to us from the old, friendly address of joe@company.com, mail to joe@company.com, which he had reclaimed and had been returned to its rightful owner. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. If you want to see your favorite subreddit in next video, leave a comment.